About 10 years ago, I was going to Weight Watchers with my friends. And we would go, I think it was like Wednesday evening or something. We would go early and we would stand in line and we would be weighed. They would take each person behind a partition and weigh them. I was standing in line and there was another person in line behind me. And she was like, "Oh, aren't you the one who talks about PTSD all the time?" And I said, "Yeah, PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder." And that was about the time that Caskets from Costco came out, which is my book about PTSD and trauma and grief, and is also kind of funny. She said, "What branch of the military did you serve in?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't serve in the military." And she said, "How do you have PTSD?" So I took a deep breath like that, and I looked at her and I said, "I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse by my dad." And you can kind of feel like every time I say something like that, you can kind of feel the bottom drop out. And I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me. And in fact, I call it the flinch because in, American culture, we don't really talk about trauma or grief or abuse or especially sexual abuse or incest in your family. And I've noticed this ever since I started talking about my experiences as a sexual abuse survivor, is that when I bring it up, when I talk about it, there's something I call like this flinch. And it's not a physical flinch. It's more of a mental, emotional flinch, and you can see it, like intuitively see it, like right behind a person's eyes. So they kind of go, but I'm doing that physically, but it's kind of it's a shock. I said that. I saw her flinch a little bit. I didn't take it personally. In fact, I was really proud of myself because that was the first time that I had really said something like that out loud in public to somebody I didn't really know. And for me, it was a really big deal. And I was really proud of myself. So let's fast forward to now while I'm filling out the application to this moth-inspired Paris storytelling workshop that I want to go to. There were only 20 spots. I was like, this is going to be really popular. I don't know if I'm going to get in. I decided to believe in myself. I applied and I got in. And so I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know how I'm going to afford this. And then people who love me said, "Hey, start a GoFundMe, see what you can do. Let your community support you." And I was like, all right, I can't argue with that. So I'm filling out the application for this, right? And there were two questions, and the answers were 500 words each. Now, I'm a writer. I don't have a problem with 500 words. And in fact, I enjoy doing it. And questions and answers to my writing critique group. And we meet right now once a month, and we bring pages and read them over, and we offer each other different kinds of feedback based on, what writers want and need. So I brought that and I was like, is this too hokey? Does this make sense? And my writing group, and they're actually like really good friends, they were like, "Kel, it's great, except you don't talk about being a survivor of child abuse until like the 800th word." They're like, isn't that your purpose? Isn't that what you've been doing for years and years, is reaching people with hope and humor and healing? And nobody else talks about that, but you talk about it. So why is it not in your application until like 800 words? It's not there. So I was like, well, that is fair. But before I said that is fair, I felt this wave of shame. And I mean shame. I felt like I had made this horrible mistake. I felt small. I felt, well, why do this anyway? What a waste of time. I told you not to do, all the things the inner critic says to us, like, why are you even trying? This is stupid. You don't have anything good to say, etc., etc., etc. And I almost started crying. And it wasn't because of what they said. What they said was totally fine and fair and lovely. It was just the shame that comes up to try and protect us, especially As trauma survivors who have gone through a lot of complex trauma, shame is always there. You might as well make friends with it. I saw it. Being aware of it does not mitigate the pain of it. So I sat with the pain for a little while. And then I was like, okay, what's the deal? And it brought up things that I thought just classic Kelly. Like I typically want a finish line to what I'm going through, whether it's pain or trauma experiences or grief. Like one day I will be done with it. And I think, it's a childhood thing. It's an entrenched idea that I deal with cyclically. It comes up every so often. Why did I wait until word 800 of this 1,000-word essay, essentially, to bring up that I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse? And it was just shame. It's just shame. It's still there. The stigma is still there. The shame is still there, even internally. And it told me that telling these stories is more important than ever. Reaching people with stories of overcoming these horrific experiences and amazingly difficult obstacles, that's a need. And it's still something that's very sensitive and deeply felt in my heart. It's part of my purpose. And even though I've had this time in my life where I haven't spoken about it or written about it since Caskets from Costco came out, really 10 years ago, it's still my story and it still wants to come out. And I have to be completely honest. I struggle with believing that my story is important, that people won't hear me, or that I struggle with the idea that people will listen and then dismiss me or not believe me. There are still people who don't believe me, who I share blood with relationally, or that I will be told that, or that it won't matter. It won't make a difference. But all of these things are coming up and they're trying to protect me. And I don't need that protection anymore because I'm at a stage where I can share my story for me, for my own healing, and I can share my story for the betterment of others. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing in Paris. That's what I'm going to learn how to do. I would love for you to partner with me in this adventure, to come along with me. I'm sure that I have included the links where they go. They're probably in my bio if you can't find them anywhere else. Or you can just bug me, like just send me a message and say, dude, you didn't put the links where you're supposed to because menopause. And I will give them to you. People are giving through my GoFundMe, but also Venmo. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. So anyway, thank you for listening and thank you for considering and thank you for wanting to change the world.